Good evening. Right now, Metro Police are desperately searching for the person or people responsible for killing a man and a woman.
And I got a male down in the middle of the street.
Breaking news now, a triple shooting leaves 2 dead.
Never expect for somebody to tell you your loved one was murdered.
This Labor Day will mark 42 years that have haunted the St. Cloud family.
30 years. 30 years this family has waited for answers.
A couple months go by, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you really start to struggle with the idea that the case might not get solved and that somebody might get away with murder.
It's very unfortunate that we have any cold cases at all, and certainly unfortunate that we have as many as we do. And that's why Ryan's work and the work of Project Cold Case is so important.
Hey everybody, welcome. Thanks for joining us. I'm trying to keep that sun off my face. The time change and the building across the street being blown up, and now the sun comes in at weird angles to our office. But thanks for joining us today. I'm Ryan Backman, founder and executive director of Project Cold Case, and my guest today is a good friend of mine, fellow former co-advocate and colleague, Carl Harms.
We're still co-advocates.
We are co-advocates. We used to work under the same roof,
yep,
and for a number of years.
The same fight and same cause.
Fighting the same cause. I was trying to think of it while I was putting together some images and some notes for today. We had tragedies both involving our dads, and I'm going to get you to talk a little bit about yours. But that's what led us kind of to the same place at the same point in time. I think I was able to trace our friendship back to 2010, early 2010, when we first met, and then obviously got to know each other a lot more. But that meeting was at a candlelight vigil for Victims' Rights Week that year in 2010, so like April 2010. And I was there for my first event as a survivor after having lost my dad in October, the October prior. And I met you. You were there taking photos. And yep. You had you gone to a couple of events prior to that? Or was that your first?
Just the candlelight vigils.
Yeah.
Not any of the camps or anything.
Yeah, so that was with Compassionate Families. But before we get into our work together at Compassionate Families, your dad was tragically killed.
Yep.
In 2007?
April 22nd, 2007, 3:36 in the morning.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that. I mean, I know the story.
So we had lost my mom 2 years prior on February 8th at 9:23 in the morning. We had to make the harsh decision of pulling the plug after a medical incident that.
I was going to say that was an unexpected loss as well, because your mom had gone in for surgery. And
then the surgery, there was an issue with the surgery, and it created sepsis, and she was on support. Basically, they were trying to, her organs were shutting down, and she was on support for about 7 days, and then we had to make the last minute decision to pull the plug. And my dad was crushed. It was the love of his life, the only woman he had ever been with, and I had to put my grief back to the side and be there for my father. And so, selfishly, I wish I wouldn't have, but at the same time, I wanted to be there for my dad. Yeah. So, although we were close, we got closer. Yeah. We spent time every day together. We would go to, he'd go to the commissary. He's U.S. military, so we'd go to the commissary. We'd buy challenge coins and all kinds of different things. And then he decided, my sister was in school to be a teacher, and he wanted to get away from Jacksonville. He'd spent some time. It was really rough with him. There was points in time where he would start crying, and to see your Superman, the one that you looked up to, the military hero, balled up in a corner crying. Yeah. After losing my mom, and then
and he was the constant reminder in that same house they had been in, for so long. every time he turned around was just a constant reminder.
And as a matter of
his
fact, every
loss.
day for lunch, if he wasn't with me, he was over at Memorial Hospital, which was the place that last place that my mom had taken her last breath, and having lunch at Memorial Hospital. But so he had talked to my sister, and they made it. They said, maybe I'll move over here and just kind of split my time with everybody. That way I can get away from Jacksonville. So he packed up his stuff, but
And she was living in Louisiana.
she was living in Louisiana. We were living in Jacksonville, and the problem with my father was that he did not want to make a decision without everybody knowing or everybody agreeing or that everybody was going to be okay with it. So he told my sister, he said, let me talk to the little boy. He called me little boy. Let me talk to the little boy, and then I'll get back to you. I'm not saying yeah, I'm not saying no. Just let me know. So he had told me, and after losing Mom, I was, again, not wanting to lose him, but I knew that it was good for him. So I was like, yeah, I think that's a good idea. Get away from Jacksonville for a little while and move up there. And he made me a promise. He said, I'm going to keep my same general practitioner here in Jacksonville. So when I got doctor's appointments, I'm going to drive back from Louisiana to go to my doctor's appointments. I had gotten kind of busy. I was working on some cars at the time, and I asked him to stay a little later, which goes into the story of a little bit of self-guilt that I had. So when he did leave, he left. He got on the road. And I had last talked to him at 9 o'clock at night in Milton, Florida. He had stopped there, and he was carrying a 4x U-Haul trailer. It was a small trailer.
Stuff.
And when he got up in Gulfport, Mississippi, and right around mile marker 34, 35, he came across a crash that had just occurred right in front of him, where the woman had hit. The woman was drunk. She hit another man. He bounced off the guardrail like 2 or 3 times, and then came to rest in the middle of the road, where the road was a little dark too. So when he came across, he tried to avoid from hitting her or hitting the other car, crashed into that on the passenger side, and then went to rest in the emergency lane.
Yeah, so it's hard to follow, but he's basically behind a crash. This woman causes a crash.
Correct.
She goes off the road, but the car she hit comes to rest in the middle of the road facing back towards...
I believe it was a 3-lane highway, so he would have been in the middle. So my father had one way or the other to go, and from the pictures and the investigation that we had with the attorneys that we had hired, the crash happened on the passenger side of the vehicle, and that's where he came to rest on the front, in the emergency lane.
Yeah.
I had an opportunity to talk to one of the witnesses after everything had happened, and she told me that that he was still there. She could see the back of his head, and his head was moving. Well, within the time of 12 minutes were going by, they were waiting for rescue, which made no sense to me because they were right off of an interstate. There was a substation and everything there. Another car came by. While the witness was walking up to him to check on him, she heard whining coming from behind her. No squealing. The guy never hit his brakes. And he careened into the back end of my father's car, pushed his car all the way up to mile marker 35, which is my memorial marker now on I-10. That impact, he was going 80 plus miles per hour. They never determined how fast, but it threw him, still buckled in his seatbelt, it threw him into the windshield and then back into the back end of the car. And to the point that when people went up to check on him, they thought that he had been ejected because he couldn't find him. The girl that initially caused the crash, she took off from the scene. The second guy that hit him from the back that came up careening was also drunk.
Yeah. We found out later they had both left the same.
Well, no. They were separate.
Well, I know, but weren't they both at a hotel or casino or something?
Well, different places.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean they were both intoxicated, both on marijuana and alcohol infused.
Yeah, we'll show some pictures here. Your dad there in his uniform. He was U.S. Navy.
U.S. Navy chief.
Navy chief, retired here, spent all of his career here.
Most of the career, all but
Out
4
on
years.
Yeah,
And then he was on sea duty for a while. He was on the USS Forstall, the FDR, and the America.
And these are some of the images you've created over the years, trying to raise awareness for drunk driving, impaired driving. That's your dad's car.
That was the first time I'd seen pictures of the car that was taken at the junkyard, but that was the first time I was actually seeing the car in person, which was a change of focus and where I think my mind was going as far as awareness.
Yeah.
When I seen the car, I fell to my knees and just screamed. I'm not ashamed to say. I mean, it was pretty rough seeing the car.
Yeah.
And the woman that was there, I asked her to take some pictures because I wanted to get some awareness photos. But that picture, she actually caught with me crying.
Yeah, that wasn't a staged photo. Let it run back through there, Clint, one more time, because I want to point out some other stuff that we saw. We talked about your dad, military career.
Got humanitarian award for the liberation of Beirut. National Defense, U.S. Navy.
You have that image of your dad tattooed on your arm. I thought, did that one not make this slideshow? I wanted that one in there to show your tribute tattoo.
Yep. Daddy goes with me everywhere.
Yeah, and again, there's the car before and after at the bottom. There's that image you're telling us about. Where you just kind of crouched down in front of that after seeing it. And again, these were all at that time when you first went over there and saw the car.
Yep.
There's a much later image of you holding that picture of your dad. And then there was an arrest, and the woman that caused the initial crash, who fled the scene, without her causing that, none of the rest happens. And we'll talk a little bit more about it, but basically she got a puny sentence. Yeah, pull that one up, Clint. So there Clint found it for us. There's your arm right after that tattoo was done. I think your son did that, didn't he? Yeah.
Yep.
With that tattoo.
Incredible artist. I might be a little biased, but
yeah. So
needs a little touching up. Fishing kind of takes away from it.
Yeah, out there torching it in the sun. So that that was your tragedy. When you come back now, your mom's not here, your dad's not here, and he's not coming back now, not for doctor's appointments or for anything else. You were contacted by the coroner over there.
Yeah,
right?
that was something that's, it still aches to this day. But the crash happened at 3:36 in the morning, and I was not notified until 4:24 p.m. That same day, but the afternoon. And the way I was notified was, the phone rings, caller ID comes up. It was Xfinity at the time. I didn't mean to give a shameless plug.
They're not paying for any of this.
But it was, it came up on the TV, and it just said Harrison County Coroner's Office. And the first question is, do you know James Harms?
Yeah. It wasn't hard.
There's not much more you can say from that point, So I walked around in disbelief. I called my father. I never wished harm or crime upon somebody, but it was the first time I ever wished that my dad was carjacked, and somebody else was killed in the car.
Yeah.
But and something clicked in me immediately, and I assumed that somebody was under the influence or something. And then it came back that there was two of them that were under the influence.
Now, the woman, what was her initial sentence? She got 10 years, but only, God, Mississippi has some pretty lax laws.
She was facing, she also fled the scene. So when she fled the scene, luckily enough, she left behind her car, which left behind her registration, which made the investigation easy.
Yeah.
So they followed up and got her within an hour. But after she had fled through a muddy field, went to her house, changed out of her clothes, went to her boyfriend's, and tried to hide underneath the sheets.
Yeah.
So she was apprehended. She was charged with DUI felony, fleeing the scene, DUI manslaughter. In Mississippi, the DUI hit and run, I believe. I'd have to look at the information because I'm kind of, working in Jacksonville, is a little different. But she was facing a total amount of 25 years.
Yeah.
Within that time, I had contacted Harrison County Coroner or Harrison County District Attorney's Office and was trying to get some more information to find out when the court dates were and everything else. They're not as open as we are as far as our records. There was certain information that was available, but not all information. And I got in contact with a victim advocate over there, and she would not return my calls.
Yeah.
So I felt it upon myself to take it upon myself to once a month in those pretrial hearings to pack up my bags and leave on a Monday and come back on a Friday and go down there. So once a month for a while there, I was going back and forth. And then when the sentence came down, they handed down the sentence, and under a plea deal that was not discussed with me. As a matter of fact, I had made a request to actually sit down and meet with her because I wanted her to know who my father was. And that was denied. It was like, absolutely not. And they said that they made a plea agreement and announced that in court. They suspended 15 years and gave her 10. In Mississippi, they have what's called an early release supervision. So for and I think she was on a 30-30 program too. So for every 30 days she got 45 days knocked off her sentence. So she did 3 years and 11 months of her 10-year sentence, which goes into that other newspaper article that you were showing in the pictures there.
Yeah. So you ended up doing some due diligence of your own, and you kind of checked on her a little bit, followed up on her a little bit to make sure she was doing the things that.
I'll never forget the day that she was released, and I know you won't either.
Yeah.
I don't believe that there was a young lady named V that was there at the time, and Sandra at Compassionate Families. But I remember I came in to the office and I just couldn't hold it together, knowing that she was being released and my father wasn't coming home.
Right.
She's out there, I'm not. So, or my father's not. But my objective of checking on her was not to see that she was doing wrong. I wanted to see that my father's life was worth something. So I'd check on her and I'd find out that she was in a club and she posted pictures of it. She was drinking, posting pictures of it. She had one photo where she was sitting in front of a bowl of marijuana and a Crown Royal bottle. And
there were pictures of her out of town at casinos and
Correct,
clubs.
which was all violations of her probation. But I did not immediately turn that over and get angry and try to be vindictive. I actually wanted to see if maybe, this was her opportunity. She got, she spent 3 years locked up. I wanted to see that progressively she was going to be able to honor my father and do the right thing. 1 year to the day, when she didn't, I had also screenshotted all the images and caught them. And it was public, by the way.
Yeah.
This was all public. And she had posted on Facebook, public. So I sent that over to the Department of Corrections in Mississippi. I carbon copied the Lieutenant Governor, the District Attorney's Office, and MDOC. All that information went over there. They picked her up within 2 hours, and within 2 hours they picked her up, tested her, she was dirty. So she went back through the program, but over there, the supervision goes back under MDOC, so it didn't go back in front of the original sentencing judge.
Right.
He went to MDOC, but she, according to the rule, that she was supposed to be facing up to 25 or up to the remaining 15 years that was suspended. What ended up happening is MDOC just kept her in for 4 months.
Right.
So she did 4 months for that violation.
And you took a beating as the bad guy from her friends and family.
Yeah, they reached out to me
that.
on Facebook. They reached out to me on Facebook and told me I was a heartless person, that they were going to pray for me. When in fact they didn't know where my heart was. My heart was in the hope that she did the right thing, but she didn't. And had another friend that also said the same. Well, not my friend, but her friend that had reached out and said the same thing and reached out to the same way. So she got released after that 4 months, and then 1 year after that, which I was not notified of, she violated again. This would make her third violation, because it didn't back up a little bit. She violated while she was out on bond also.
Yeah.
So on her third violation, she came up dirty with opiates and THC. And according to the probation officer, he said that there was some issue with the opiates because there was a possibility that a doctor had prescribed them, which made no sense to me, but she did 5 days for that.
Yeah.
1 year almost to the day again, which would have been in 2016, I believe.
Yeah.
I believe it was 2016. She was at 4 o'clock in the morning, caught in Greene County, outside of the county, which put it outside of the realm of MDOC, with a tractor trailer stolen from the Ward County supervisors in Greene County, Mississippi. So at that point, it put it back in front of the original sentencing judge. And when it went back in front of the original sentencing judge, I was traveling back and forth last year while doing my daily duties. I was traveling back and forth last year for her sentencing, and she got the full 15 years. So now she's back in prison.
Finally gave her the sentence that she probably should have received.
And having said that, they have a program over there. They have a program over in Mississippi that they've just recently started doing. It's called a VOD, a Victim Offender Dialogue. MDOC sent me the information. All I have to do is sign it. It's still sitting on my desk.
Yeah.
I still want to do it, and if she agrees to it, then I can sign it, and they will talk to her. And if she agrees to it, then I can go over there and meet with her and sit down and have a conversation with her. It wouldn't do anything for her sentence.
No.
But it would be that last-ditch effort I can do to honor my father and do the right thing.
Yeah. I hope you're not getting your hopes up about that.
No.
And I say that because she, I
know at that point I've done everything I can do.
Yeah. Well, I think you've done everything you could do well beyond this. I think she, at least up to this point, has always played the victim, that somehow your dad's death was not her fault, that that there was an injustice in her world to have to pay the consequences for your dad's death.
Yeah, at one of her first hearings last year, she had, or year before last, 2016, her first hearing, she had, on her probation, I had written a victim impact statement. I've written 3 victim impact statements in my case. But in that victim impact statement was more along the lines of, because my first victim impact statement was about my dad, and not about her. I didn't, I just wanted to share with the court who my father was.
Right.
The second one was about her violation and what it's done to me, and the people that that have reached out to me and how they've re-victimized me. But in there, I was mentioning stuff that I thought the judge was already aware of about the other violations. The judge was not aware of the other violations, which really upset the judge. So when she read the statement to herself, Judge Dotson had read the statement. Then she takes the statement and she says, "Young lady, I want you to go back there. I want you to read this young man's statement about his father and what you have done, and we'll reconvene in 15 minutes." And when they went, the judge says, "I want the file now." She goes back in the back, and it's a small courtroom in Mississippi, a small courthouse. She goes back in the back, and I can hear her down the hallway without saying explicits. what is that SOB doing here? I've already paid my time and done my time for that, you know. So obviously she wasn't. But still, having said that, having known that, I still want to sit in front of her. Not to get anything for myself, I mean for her, but for myself.
Yeah.
I want to know that I've done it. And that's not for everybody, it's just the way I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that kind of, I mean, that takes us, you know, kind of to where we met at Compassionate Families, at those candlelight vigil. Then you and I end up volunteering for Camp Maddie, which was a program that organization did for children that have lost loved ones.
I remember that night very, very clear. It was probably my first. No, I wouldn't say probably. It was. You were my first opportunity to be able to open up.
Yeah.
We walked around on the campgrounds out at Camp Immokalee and just talked to each other, and I shared mine, you shared yours, and to me there was an immediate connection.
Yeah.
You know, because you had a loss that was different, and I had a loss that was different. It was at that point that I realized that all of our losses are different.
Yeah.
We all have different relationships, and we all need guidance. And I think you best put it one time in a post about the second drunk driver, because they never did charge him. Because I believe you still have it up on the website, and I think it's behind me actually.
Yeah.
You said that, I'm trying to remember exactly what you had said, but you had said that Carl did not want to be, he wanted to be a part of the solution.
Yeah.
And knowing you and being able to talk to you, that's what led me into that. And then obviously with the other organizations that I had reached out without naming them, and not feeling connected, not feeling like it.
You
There
kind
was
of
such a separation and segregation, and how vehicular homicide was taken at that time.
Yeah, you got turned away by some other organizations that didn't feel like your loss was important.
I had the person that had said something who I brought it up to, said that they needed to look into it because they weren't sure if that victim, or that was their definition of an innocent victim of a violent crime.
Yeah, yeah.
And immediately I thought, how more violent can you get than being crushed in between a car?
Or how more innocent can you get driving to your daughter's house? But needless to say, you know, it took me a little while to pull you out.
Yeah.
You were still in a very dark place. You've admitted that time and time again, that you were really struggling at that time. And
I was struggling with my life. I was struggling. I did not know if I wanted to go on.
Yeah. And man, I needed some help over there at Compassionate Families at the time, because it was me and Sandra and V, and we were doing great things, but we were working on computers that were the world's first.
Yeah,
we had
became the techie.
An AOL email address, one email address with an AOL extension, and
a website on Angel Fire.
And a website on Angel Fire, and you had shown some interest and some knowledge and technology, and so we got you up there originally to just help us out with that kind of stuff, you know. And
when you could get me up there.
When I could get you up there, because that was a struggle too. Carl, you gonna come up tomorrow? Yeah, I'll be there at 9. I'll be there at 9. So 9 would roll around, no Carl. 10 would roll around, no Carl. About 11, I'd start calling. 12, usually by about 3 o'clock, I'd get in touch with you, and you were like, I'm waiting on the mailman. I'd be like,
yeah, I did.
You know he's going to come regardless, Carl, whether you're there or not. The mailman still comes.
I came up with all kinds of excuses because I just did not want to leave the house.
I know. And the next day we'd go through it all over again, and the next day, and then you'd come up there, and we would have, we would bond, we would have a good time. We've talked a lot about the loss and tragedy and sadness that goes along with it, but when you are able to surround yourselves with people that have experienced something similar, Sandra Jones has well, yeah, we'll get back to those pictures in a minute. Sandra Jones had lost somebody, and then lost another person since we've known her, but slowly it being hard to get you there changed to we couldn't get you to leave. It was like, Carl, we all want to go home now. It's time to leave. And you would, you volunteered there 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, plus youth hopes and Camp Maddie's and vigils and picnics and everything we did. And you became the hardest working volunteer in the history of any organization. I mean, you were unpaid for years. You came in there daily like that was your job, and you treated it like your job.
It was like 3 years.
I think like 3 years you were there as a full-time volunteer, but just beyond even a full-time hour, 8 hours a day or 40 hours a week. Some of the images, that slideshow, Clint, let's put that back up, and we'll talk a little bit about that. That was our banner. There's you and Sandra at a Victims' Rights Week event.
Yeah, that banner was a lot of work.
There's 1,000 pictures on that banner, and you did all of them. That was a newspaper article that Marilyn Young wrote called Workspace, and she came and interviewed both of us about being advocates in our office that we shared at the time. You hard at work. maybe post picture. I don't know.
No.
You were always working hard.
Sandra came in and took a picture of me.
That was Sandra again. We were at another CFI event. That's Camp Maddie. You typically were taking pictures, and it was hard to capture you ever. But there you are showing images to other campers. There's our old friend Haley Winslow, who we never see here anymore.
I think she's in Australia.
Yeah, she just keeps going back and forth. That was Christmas time at Compassionate Families, the Christmas monster, Carl. Always joking and trying to lighten the mood and what was a very heavy job. We were struggling, taking on all of these stories. We had 1,000 pictures on the wall, and we knew pretty much every victim by name.
We had somebody.
Face.
We had somebody come up and ask, do you have so and so's picture? Right? And, we both of us, we knew whether we had the picture or not,
and we knew a part of the story. And then
that's one of the things that about in that organization, and is we only knew the victim.
Yeah.
We really didn't know the defendant. No. Because we took the time to know who the victim was.
Right. Yeah. And that organization was started by Glenn and Margaret Mitchell, and they were, through their own tragedy where their son was murdered at Terry Parker High School in 1993, and they saw a need to be able to form a bond with other people that had suffered through those kinds of losses. And here we come years later, a decade later and beyond, and we kind of, I like to think we helped elevate that organization at the time.
I think we did, not to pat ourselves on the back, but I think we did, because I took special interest in vehicular homicides, which
were often ignored.
They
didn't come. We would get a fax when we first started there every Monday morning from the medical examiners. They were not on the
MEO reports because they're considered accidents.
Exactly.
Which
so we would get
topic.
all the homicides from the week before that had been ruled homicides, but that never included vehicular homicides. So you had to do some of your own digging and due diligence,
research
to find these families. Stalk them in some cases, because that was, we joke, but what I did with you, the constant calling, and trying to keep up with, you did that with those families to try to offer them that support that you needed.
Now you knew I was in Mississippi, and I remember going up to the hotel, and as I was going to the hotels, and I was really down, and just out of the blue. You asked me how I was doing, how did the day go, and that was looking at you being so fresh from it. Mine was 2007, yours was 2009. I have one identifier. I know what she looks like, and she's being charged, but I don't know who the other person is. I never will.
Right.
So I've kind of got the mix of we have justice on one side, not justice on the other, but then you're sitting there, and you're so strong to stand up for me.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we did when we spotlighted your dad's case was we talked about how an arrest doesn't always equal justice either, because even the one that was arrested, again, 3.5 years on a 25-year sentence with 15 of them suspended, and so technically 3.5 out of a 10-year sentence, and then getting out and then reoffending, and and not, there was never, it never felt like somebody was actually facing the consequences for their actions until the very end, when she finally had messed up enough times that they
Justice
gave her the
justice
15
is
years.
temporary. Feelings are forever.
Yeah. So that was important for me. I felt like to share with families. We want accountability. We want justice. We want an arrest made, but we don't want to give a perception that an arrest equals closure, that an arrest that a conviction equals everything goes back to normal the way it used to be. And sometimes we see this, that you get so focused in needing that face to assign blame and the anger and that need for an arrest and that need for a conviction. And then how many times do we walk out of a courtroom with a family that's on a high because they just got a guilty verdict, and then by the time you get to the parking lot, the realization hits you that, oh wait, my loved one's still gone. They're not coming back.
Yeah, this is
I
not.
didn't
this
really
is not a
win
broken
anything
vase.
right here.
This is not a broken vase. It's even with a broken vase. We had that project in Camp Maddie.
Yeah.
With one of our therapy things for the kids is that you take a vase and you break it, you glue it back together. There's always going to be a piece missing.
Yeah, and it never quite fits right, and there's breaks and scars and missing pieces, and that was a great way of describing how you are after a tragic loss. Is you put it back together and you glue it, duct tape it, whatever you got to do, but it's not the same. Some of my fondest memories are Youth Hope and Camp Maddie, and those were specific programs for children that had lost loved ones to homicide, and
it was a great outreach. I truly miss it, and hopefully one day we can somehow we can all come together
rekindle
and
it again.
Rekindle it, but it was an opportunity to give these kids something to do.
It's so funny now. We've gone different paths, and we're going to talk about that. We still keep in touch. We're still fighting for victims every day. But like my daughter's, one of her teachers at daycare, or actually my son's teacher at daycare, we friends on Facebook, and I find out we've got mutual friends, and all of our mutual friends are Camp Immokalee YMCA counselors. And so I, hey, you go to you a YMCA counselor? And she goes, yeah. And I'm like, oh man, Immokalee is wonderful. I said, I used to help out with this camp that went down there, and she's like, yeah. And I'm like, Camp Maddie. And she's like, you were part of Camp Maddie? And I'm like,
everybody knew Camp Maddie.
Yeah, I was the camp coordinator, whatever, for a number of years. And it turned out that after I left Compassionate Families was the first year she had been one of the camp counselors. And then sometimes dealing with legislators, I call these their legislative aides, and a lot of them were YMCA counselors, and they found out who I was, and we started talking, and they're like, Camp Maddie was the best camp. Was the most fun weekend I ever had. If you ever figure out how to get that thing going again, I have a cell phone full of names of people that will volunteer their time to come back and do Camp Maddie. And
it was a great time. The week after was another story.
Yeah. The week after, I mean, it was brutal, and that was named after Maddie Clifton, who was killed here by her neighbor, and he hid her body under his waterbed. He was 14, she was 8, I think, and there was a huge, massive search for her. And then they discovered her, a week later under his bed, and her family wanted to create a living memorial for Maddie. The community had an outpouring of support, donations, and her mom Sheila took a lot of that money and
Yeah, I believe the foundation.
the foundation, the underwriting to start Camp Maddie. And Sheila has been a great supporter. She was a great supporter of Compassionate Families, and has been a great supporter of Project Cold Case. And she's usually at our events. And but they created a wonderful, wonderful camp. And a few years ago there was that the Harlem Shake was a kind of big deal, and I'm sure if people don't remember it, they will with this. So we wanted to do our own Compassionate Families, Youth Hope Camp version.
We brought a ladder out. We had the tripod.
We had this thing planned. So here we go. We're going to show you.
And then we had some joker that just came along, and he shocked us all. But you'll see him.
Yeah. Let's watch the video.
Con los terroristas.
Do the Harlem Shake.
Yeah, so there it was.
Caught me with my drink.
That was our version of the Harlem Shake with our campers. All the, a lot of those kids we saw grow up from years of doing Youth Hope camps, and Rochamel out there in front with the basketball. Patty that works here now in the background,
and Ryan pushing the broom in the middle with the beard on.
Wondered who that
Play it
guy
back
was.
later on, and make sure you see this fella.
Yeah, I had a
Carl was there,
fake
but he was behind the camera
and a mop, and I just started pushing the mop through the
and
crowd.
he didn't tell anybody he was doing it either. It was just like all of a sudden I could not stop laughing.
Yeah, well, I wasn't gonna dance, so I was like, "What can I do?" And so I pushed the broom through.
Janitor Ryan.
Yeah. So I think we're getting some comments while we're talking. Sue Washburn, who was a volunteer for us and always came out and supported Camp Maddie, and talking about you staying up all night the last night of camp, which was so true. I mean, you would struggle to put together a slideshow. So at the closing ceremonies of the camp, all the kids could see, the pictures that you took, and you put it to music, and that was kind of the highlight. And that was when you knew the weekend was finally over, was when Carl's video played, and you would stay up all night, and almost every year you had some kind of technical difficulty playing the video, and would just about panic and lose your mind.
Oh, man.
I remember one year we were trying to crowd them all around a laptop to just watch it so that they could see it.
Was that the first year?
I think that was the first year.
It was the first year because the monitor stopped working, and it wouldn't.
It wouldn't. So we really had some great times. That program was, the thing that I want people to understand is this is what helped us.
Yeah.
Us being able to participate in those things and help other people,
especially the children.
Especially the children. That if there's people out there and they're wondering how to start healing from their loss, I mean, volunteer somewhere that matters to you. It doesn't have to be an organization. Compassionate Families, unfortunately, isn't around anymore.
Right.
But wherever you live, whether it's hospice or Make-A-Wish, or there's a lot of charities out there that people can participate in, and that's what helped us heal, and that's what helped us kind of transition to our next phase in this journey for us. Before we get there, I pulled up this picture of Sandra. I had Clint find this picture of Sandra because she was the third member of this Three Amigos group for a long time. We had V there for a long time too, but there towards the end, it was the three of us, and we did a mad walk in honor of your dad. And we were the last group to come walking around. It was a nice sized group of us. Yeah. And so I think you had this idea, didn't you, to for the police were literally escorting our group.
What had happened? We were walking by, and there was somebody there with a wheelbarrow that had oranges for the walkers.
Right,
for the
right.
Walk
They
Like
had an
Mad
orange tree, a couple orange trees, and they had put a bunch of oranges.
So they
out.
walked over to do it, and the police officer pulled up behind. He was supposed to be keeping the traffic from coming up, and he plays on the.
He gets on
intercom and he puts Bad Boys on.
Yeah.
And she starts running, so she just stole an orange.
Right.
It really is. I mean, she did some time for that.
Yeah. So she's running away, and you capture a picture. Somebody captures the picture, and it was classic. It was classic Sandra.
I think that was me again because I was always behind the camera.
Always behind the camera.
I didn't want my picture taken.
But we really did do all we could to make the best of horrible situations that we had all gone through. Sandra is. As we speak, I just got a text message is on the phone with the sergeant of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office cold case unit because her grandson, who used to come to our camps, I
was on the phone with her last night too, and I know she's in contact with you guys too.
Yeah. Her grandson Anthony was murdered. We got to be going on 2 years now, coming up on 2 years.
Yeah,
and
as a matter of fact, we were all I think besides Sandra. I was already at my other job.
Yeah,
and you were already starting.
I had already started Project Cold
She
Case.
called me after trying to go to the hospital, and then I called you. So both of us were there the night that
we were at the scene.
She was notified that it was a terrible night. It was. This is something that's going to stick with me, I'm sure, and it's going to stick with you also.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had been through so much together and had traveled so far in our kind of grief journeys where we were able to smile and laugh because she had lost a grandson prior to that, to a child abuse situation, and that. I'm gonna have Sandra come in one day and sit down with us and tell her story, but just basically. The guy got acquitted in trial on the first loss, and then Anthony, who was a part of all those Camp Maddies and Youth Hopes,
he was really. I mean, there is a video on somewhere floating around out there that I did for Anthony after he was killed.
Shows him as just a little baby.
Well, yeah, and he was like he was in the initial Camp Maddies. He was almost like the poster kid. For Camp Maddie, as far as us reaching out to the inner city, and he was doing good there for a little while. But this,
it didn't end up well. And Sandra, that case is still unsolved. Anthony Ray, and I know that I just got a text from the sergeant that he's on the phone with her. So. I hope that they're, getting some answers now. I know you guys had a meeting. You now work as an advocate at the state attorney's office or victim specialist. What do they call you now?
Yeah, specialist.
Come on now.
Sorry, I didn't leave it to me. Victim specialist at the state attorney's office. Strictly do homicide and violent crimes.
You had a meeting with Sandra and her daughter.
Because our focus is not just on the cases that are ongoing; it's also on the cases that, ongoing as far as prosecution.
Right. We're in arrest
investigation.
Yeah.
Also.
Well, we had your boss, Melissa Nelson, the elected state attorney, on here a few weeks ago, and she talked about how since she has taken over, your office sends a letter for every case and says if at any time you would like to. Meet with us to discuss, we can do that. And so you end up handling most of those meetings with the assistant state attorney that's assigned to the case.
The one that's assigned to the case, and normally I think every time we meet with Melissa too.
Yeah. So, for those that don't know, I ended up leaving January 2015 and starting Project Cold Case from Compassionate Families. You stayed at Compassionate Families for a little while longer, maybe a year.
It was May 2015 is when I left.
Oh, so 5 months after I left, you left and went to.
And that's a unique situation too, because you're going from the nonprofit world into the legal world, and you got to understand going into it that there's certain barriers. There's things that you want to do because you used to do them at Compassionate or at nonprofit.
Yeah.
but there's barriers. There's certain things you can't do. There's plenty of resources and there's stuff to put them out there for, but there's certain things you can't do as a specialist with law enforcement. And
we talked about this a little bit last week with Jay Howell, who you know well.
Absolutely.
And he was in here and we were talking about Project Cold Case is a private nonprofit. We are not connected to the sheriff's office. We're not connected to the state attorney's office.
Right.
No, the sheriff doesn't sign my paycheck. The city doesn't sign my paycheck. So it's a lot easier for me to ask certain questions,
Mm-hmm.
than it is somebody that works within those buildings, and you have to deal with the attorneys every single day.
I think that was one of my challenges going in, but one of the things that I've recognized and realized is that I'm there for the office and I'm there for the attorneys, but I'm also there to take care of my families. So if the question is there, I always tell them, the only wrong question is the question you never ask.
Yeah.
So, I empower them to ask the questions. But in understanding that there is rules and there's regulations, there's legislation, there's stuff that's written already that they have to follow. And unfortunately, sometimes you do need the case to be, when the case an arrest is made, that case is going to be prolonged, but that prolong is a necessary thing to keep the appeals because there's further victimization that goes on.
Yeah.
That's where I think a little bit of the difference is with the nonprofit world is because I think with us, me and you, you and Sandra, we put a lot of focus not on, because we didn't know the defendants.
Yeah.
We put the focus on the victim because we wanted to know who the victim was. So coming into the office, that was something I brought in. I want my attorneys to know. I want my attorneys to know not who they met the night of the crime, but who that person was.
Sure. And you were the only advocate that was hired there that was actually a survivor as well.
Yeah.
So you were bringing a very unique perspective.
Yeah.
It was to that office, because it is very different when you look at a case legally and when you look at a case from a family perspective, right, emotionally. Emotions don't carry in the court of law.
No.
So as mad or as frustrated as you are,
they have to be avoided.
Exactly. And so, I mean, these are conversations you have to have with these families, as those tough questions. Why, and we talked about this with Jay last week. Why is the defendant have more rights than the victim? You know what I mean? We get that question a lot as advocates, and it's because that's the way our Constitution is written, is to protect. You have to remember that defendant is presumed innocent, and you are innocent until proven guilty. And so the Constitution protects the innocent.
Yeah.
And
I think, speaking on that, because that's another great topic, because that's something I do discuss with the families, is that if by chance you were in the wrong place at the wrong time and you were not that person that did that crime, you would want the best defense put forward to make sure to get you, that you're not the one.
Right.
So, it is a necessary process. It's a torturous process, but it's a necessary process. Well,
it's the system we have. It's, to our knowledge, the best system out there. Yeah. I haven't seen another system that does it better, but it certainly isn't perfect.
Right.
There's still room for error. There's still room for improvement. There's still room to do things better, and I think as long as you're striving to get better and do that, as detectives, as prosecutors, as advocates, we're all trying to do better and make the world a better place. But we have different kind of niches, that are all. They all overlap at a certain point, but then there's that outlying part that doesn't overlap, and I tell people sometimes, a detective has to separate themselves emotionally from the case. You don't want their judgment clouded, and prosecution's the same way. We're in a unique position where we can view things both, from the perspective of having lost somebody, and from the knowledge we have gained with all these years of advocating through and
I think that's one of
courts.
the things that I carried from the nonprofit, and you were talking about doing the videos and stuff like that. One of the things that I started doing at the state attorney's office is gathering pictures and possibly live pictures, because I want to put life to that victim. And I gather those pictures and those videos, and then I do what's called a video impact video, or a victim impact video. That's presented to the court, again, to provide a face. It's a way to put that victim in the court, even though it's, but that's a tribute to them.
Sure. Well, we always say, our loved ones are defined by their last moments on earth, and but that's not who they were. They had these years, however old they were, of life prior to that. But a trial is focused on the end of their life. The media's attention is usually the end of their life, and so you get that unique opportunity with impact statements to tell the story of who they truly were and what society is now missing with their absence.
Yeah, the state does a great job throughout the process. They do a great job throughout the process of presenting the case, the crime that occurred.
Right.
But what's not talked about is what you can testify to. And the only thing that the thing that you can testify to, that only you can testify to, is who that person is. Not who that person was at the last moment, because we see that. We know that. That's what the whole thing has been.
Right.
But we need to know who that person is. The other thing that's really important about the victim impact statements, too, and it was brought to my attention by a previous supervisor when I went over to the state attorney's office, because, again, it was neat going into the law enforcement field, is that those victim impact statements and those videos go in their jackets.
Yeah.
So not only does the court know, but now it goes with them. So when they get reviewed or they get looked over, the people pull out these things.
They're seeing
your loved one.
Right.
And they know that this was not just any old individual. This was not some blurb that just flashed up on the crime, the crime on the news.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important that gets shared that way.
And to that point, we talked last week about a book that this office helped with, Grief Diaries Project Cold Case. But you co-authored a book, a Grief Diaries book as well, called Victim Impact Statements.
Yes.
And you brought a copy of it today. That's
I don't know where
cameras over here. And you, how many participants did you have to?
What we did with this is not just Jacksonville, but a lot of them are families that I had, quite a few of them are families that I had assisted in here. Some of them got exactly what they wanted out of the system. Some of them didn't.
Yeah.
And I wanted an unbiased look at it. So what we did is we reached around from around the country. We got statements in here, victim impact statements in here from Canada. We've got victim impact statements in here from Mexico, and then we got victim impact statements from across the U.S.
Yeah.
And it does vary from state to state, as far as your statements go. But one of the things that was really important about the victim impact statement is it tells the story, and then we confirmed and put in the victim impact statement that was presented in court.
And so this is also a guide for people that are going through that now. They can look at this book and see real impact statements that were used in court.
Right. And that was another reason why I had wanted to do the book, was because I didn't have anything to do to reference back to as far as what other people were saying or what other people were doing.
That was something that we started at Compassionate Families too. We'd ask the family permission to share their impact statements with other families. And I actually still do that at the state attorney's office. Yeah. When I get that, I present that to them. It was such a big help. But these Grief Diaries books, I didn't really get into it last week, but they have titles. I mean. Here's some of them on the back. Hit by Impaired Driver. You contributed to that book as well. Project Cold Case was ours. Surviving loss of a child, loss of an infant, loss of a spouse, suicide, parent, sibling. But not just that. I mean, there was, illnesses and, they had a title for everything. And you can go on Amazon.com and you can look up the Grief Diary series and you can order these books still to this day. And like I said, you had contributed to the impaired driver one as well before you actually co-authored.
And your last guest actually had written my foreword on here too.
Jay Howell, that was what we talked about. He wrote our foreword, and he wrote your foreword as well, and that just speaks again to the respect we have for him and what he's been able. A lot of
respect for Jay.
He's been able to do. We've already gone an hour, and I want to get to this. We talked about all this stuff that you've gone through and what you've done, but you started a nonprofit as well.
The picture of me in front of the car is where that image had.
The idea was
where
born.
The idea was born, because seeing the car kind of formatted my mind. So I wanted to create an organization where we had a car that a girl was or a person was killed in, and take that car around and share lifes and moments of that situation. And I finally was able to achieve that with a young lady that I had met.
Because you ended up not being able to secure your dad's car.
I was not able to secure my dad's car. I would have been able to secure it, but transporting it back from Mississippi as badly as it was crushed.
And this was years in the making.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, this took a while. And then even getting the car, Jennifer Kirk was the victim. She was leaving her job at the state hospital. Yeah. And she worked kind of the late shift, so she was leaving.
Yeah, she was leaving, heading home. Her mom was watching the kids.
Middle of the night, was it midnight or something?
Yeah, I think it was March 29th, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But I believe it was March 29th, and she was heading home. Came across as a young man, never been in trouble. He had never been in trouble. Not a speeding ticket, not anything. And he just happened to be out having a good time. He was just out having a good time like anybody else would do. And that's what we do with JAXImpact, is we go around and tell that story, but we share. It's about taking responsibility, and that responsibility goes a lot further than just a DUI. It could be impairment of any sort, or also taking responsibility with your relationship with your loved ones. And
did he run a stop sign?
He ran a stop sign, and he actually pled up.
Yeah.
He pled straight up. The family asked to meet with them for the first time, which we, like I was saying earlier about the victim offender dialogue, we actually do that now at the office. And this was the first opportunity I had ever seen it actually occur. And it was an amazing thing. But I told Debbie at the time, Debbie Pruitt is the mother.
Yeah.
I told Debbie at the time, I said, please don't give your hopes up. Because the true measure of a man is what he's going to be when he gets out. Because once he's in there and he's locked up,
they're all,
that's all he thinks about.
Yeah.
Well, the day that the fella got out, Randall Morrow, I actually can call him a gentleman.
Yeah.
The day that he got out, the first person he called was me. Because he didn't feel that it was fair that he was out and Jennifer couldn't be.
Yeah.
So I think the true character of him. So he'll be traveling around with us when we go to the schools and the other stuff, and we just get some scheduling arrangements. But we did it for a long time out of our own pocket. It was self-funded. We were just a community awareness. But as of June, we've become a nonprofit. We're seeking nonprofit status with the government.
Yeah.
Obviously, so we don't. But we're not. We're like you guys. We're not all about just putting things out there. We just want to do something for the people.
Well, you got a trailer. You have to put gas. You have to lug the car.
Well,
you
now
buy
the trailer's falling apart.
Yeah, you have aren't wristbands. You've got one on that you hand out. There are expenses that go along. I mean, these are not. You're not paying yourself from this nonprofit. This is what you do on your free time.
We funded it ourselves. I mean, we've given close to 3,000. I mean, we've done over 3,000 pledges, I'm sure.
Yeah, and let's see some of these pictures, because we have a video too. But these pictures, that's the car that Jennifer was driving.
Yeah, she was T-boned.
Yeah, and these are just some of the random images from your JAXImpact presentations that are usually done with sheriff's watches or
this one actually
fairs.
Right here is
you
from
see the Bud Light
Budweiser.
truck in the back. Yeah, I remember that.
We did presentation on Budweiser's grounds, which was really unique and fantastic. That Budweiser takes responsibility with their product.
Yeah. Well, they do promote drinking responsibly, and and that's why. Jennifer had 2 kids or 3? 3 children.
She had 3. One of them, the father stepped forward, and
that's what
he's
it was.
got
Yeah,
her.
he's
But the
got
other 2 are
2.
with mom.
Have to be being raised by their grandmother now because
She's legally adopted them too.
Yeah. So I've gone out and seen it. You also go to schools and you speak to the students. Debbie goes with you.
And now that Randall's out, Randall the defendant, we get to tell the whole story. We get to tell the story in a circle. This is what it does.
This is one of the things you.
That is one of our state attorneys in the pink shirt came out to see one of our events, and that was one of our.
You have these goggles. What are they called? They're called
fatal vision goggles.
Fatal vision goggles, and they show stages of impairment.
Yeah, we have 2 different levels, and one of the levels that we have is specifically the level of the level of intoxication that Randall was the night he was driving. So we incorporate that into showing them what he was looking like.
And you put them on a parking stripe.
Yep.
And you tell them to walk a straight line normally, and then you put the glasses on them and you tell them to walk a straight line, and everybody.
And we really try to have a good time with it because we don't want to make it too. We don't want people to be disinterested.
But you're raising awareness and you're giving them an opportunity to see it firsthand.
And it opens those kids' minds. They see that car, they see the crush.
And they talk to the victim's mom, and then you're there to tell them about your dad, and you have big printouts of the newspaper articles, of Jennifer's death. And then set this video up. So we're going to watch this video. It's a couple minutes long. But
when after the sentencing, or after the meeting that we had the day before the sentencing out in Baker County, we sat down. It was a very, very, very emotional situation. I had a recent one with Mr. Farah. Bobby Farah. And it was very similar to that situation where there was tension, but it was a good healing thing for them to actually get the opportunity to sit down in front of them. So he got that opportunity, but this was prior to his sentencing, and he pled straight up to the court. And he pled straight up to the court. The judge was ready to sentence him, but the family was asking for the maximum penalty, and he knew that they were going to do that. So they go for a break, and he comes back, and when he came back, Debbie and them came up to me, and they're like, we want to ask for the minimum. So I called Ralph over, the state attorney over there, and he came over, and I said, the family needs to talk to you. I said, they want to ask for the minimum. Took the judge and everybody by surprise. The judge ended up giving him 5 years.
Yeah.
So at that time, he took 3 things with him. He took my business card, he took his Bible, and a picture of Jennifer.
Wow.
That's what he took to jail with him.
Yeah.
And we stayed in contact with him. Talked to him almost every weekend. He wrote back and forth with Debbie. They still are in contact, and we are still in contact. Obviously, we're going to move forward and go and having him at our presentation.
Part of our presentation, and I should say, again, giving credit where credit's due. Glenn Mitchell did a similar thing with one of the men involved in his son's murder. There were 4 guys, 1 shooter. One of them, kind of recognized the gravity of the situation, had kept in touch with the Mitchells.
Yeah, and I never pictured myself being in that position. And it was an amazing thing to see Glenn and Ellis getting along like that. But now that I am in that situation, it's really a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah.
I don't have that, and I'm not going to get that in my own personal case, and I don't think a lot of people will.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah, it could be dangerous to think that that's the norm. You know,
yeah. You don't want to.
There are people out there that will never take responsibility for their actions, and the first thing you have to have before you can even consider communication is somebody has to take
Yep.
responsibility.
And that's what JAXImpact is all about, is responsibility.
Yeah, well, let's watch that video real quick.
Of 3 taken from her children by a drunk driver. It is a heartbreak that too many local families live with.
Along this busy Baker County road sits this quiet reminder of a life lost. It marks the spot Jennifer Kirk and Hunter Morrow tragically met in March 2012.
Once I seen her lights, I just stuck both feet in the floor. You know, I hit the brake, the clutch, gas, everything.
Then came the painful realization of what he had done.
I jumped in the car and I was screaming for her. And I knew she was gone, you know.
Morrow was drunk when he ran a stop sign, killing this young mother of 3.
I wish my mom was still alive so we can go to the zoo together.
As Jennifer's family battled their grief, they wondered about the man who caused their pain.
I had a lot of hatred for this man. I thought of ways that I could hurt this man because he took my daughter.
But Pruitt tempered her hate, and instead of seeking justice in a courtroom, she chose a more difficult path.
I just had a feeling that my daughter would want me to forgive him. And I did.
Pruitt asked for leniency, and the court agreed. Morrow, a father himself, got the minimum, 5 years, and another chance at life.
She was kind enough to forgive me.
From forgiveness, friendship, forged by the words in these letters.
Can't describe it, my family and I would like to thank you.
Words that brought both comfort and redemption.
I'm not an evil person, but I did do a bad thing. And their mama didn't leave them. Through my bad choices, I took her.
Bridget Matters, CBS 47.
All right, so that kind of talks about the responsibility that you're taking about, which is what JAXImpact is. The foundation of JAXImpact is take responsibility, make good decisions, you know, understand that your decisions can directly impact other people and their lives.
What happened with Randall, which was I don't think was shown in that video. What happened with Randall is he had also was a new father. He had never had a ticket or anything else. And like I said, he was never in trouble. So he goes to prison. He takes responsibility. He took full responsibility. He did not challenge anything. He told his attorneys that he was going to fire them, and if they just wouldn't stop. So he takes full responsibility. He goes in there, and while he's in there, his son gets mad at him and just I would assume disowned him. From my discussions with Randall and Debbie, and his wife divorced him. He lost his wife too. He comes back out and has to rebuild his life.
Yeah.
The difference is too, in this and somebody with a handgun and a brutal murder, there is a huge difference. There's a huge difference because the alcohol takes the judgment away, and that's another part of the thing that we share is that responsibility starts before you start drinking. Because once you start drinking, that first drink, your judgment's impaired.
Yeah.
And without that judgment, you can't really tell yourself that you're able to get behind and make that wheel that you wouldn't normally do, So
we had a comment on the questions from our good buddy Mr. Welch, who we love you, even though you are very angry still, and we understand your frustrations. But I did feel like it was important to point out that there is a difference. Mr. Welch brought this up in the comments. A death penalty case, which was the situation he was dealing with, there are different circumstances for reading your impact statement. Typically, when it's not a death penalty case, it is during, at a later date after the jury has been dismissed, and where the judge will read those over and take those into account in passing a sentence. In a death penalty case, the victims give those statements in front of the jury because the jury is deciding whether it's life or death for the defendant in the state of Florida, and so there are only two options in that death penalty case when they're found guilty. That is life in prison without the possibility of parole, or the death penalty, and the juries make those determinations. So you actually read your impact statement to the juries. Yep. In a case that does not carry the death penalty, where the sentence could be a range even in plea deals where it could be a range from 20 years to life or 25 years to life, and the judge is making that determination, then the victims actually do have the opportunity to say what they want the defendant to get, and they can say a minimum like Debbie did, or they could say a maximum like a lot of families do, and make a recommendation. But make no mistake about it, your recommendation is your recommendation and your opinion. The judge or jury will make the determination based on what they feel. But these impact
really
statements,
important is to share what's getting lost in the process.
Right. The goal of these statements should always be to remind the world of the life that was taken, not to focus on the death, not even to focus on the defendant. And we would always encourage families when writing their impact statement to tell. We know all about the defendant at the end of a trial. There's nothing you're going to say.
We want to know.
Yeah, there's nothing you're going to say that we don't know about a defendant. But what we don't know about, and a lot of times at the end of a trial, is what you said earlier: the victim's life. Right. What is society missing now that person's gone? And Mr. Welch's impact statement was, it was phenomenal, heart-wrenching, and phenomenal. Yeah. And
I think he even said it in there about her being prevented from saving another life. She could have been.
His statement. It resonated with me, and I've heard very few people ever put into words the feeling, what it must feel like to lose a child, and what that impact is. He did an amazing job. It didn't turn out, the jury didn't.
And we have no control over that.
That's right. We don't. I stand by that. He gave an amazing impact statement, and he did justice by his daughter. I know he's frustrated, and he has right to be frustrated with the way some of that stuff ended. And we talked about that, Patty. We had Patty in here, months ago, and we talked about our experience in that trial.
I know he had me in tears.
Yeah. We have no idea what a jury is going to, and even with a judge, we don't get to force the judge to make the decision we want. The judge is going to make those decisions. But at a moment when you don't have a voice at all, when you're sitting in a trial, you don't get to raise your hand, you don't get to stand up and talk, you don't get to give your opinion. This is your moment when you're doing that impact statement. That is your moment to talk about your loved one. And it can be extremely powerful. And I promise you, Mr. Welch, it may not have resonated with the jury that day, but it certainly did with the other people that were in that courtroom. And your words were not lost. We think about Tammy a lot, and we talk about that case a lot, and we use that case as a benchmark for what families may endure. It took 6 years for that trial to actually for that case to go to trial after he was arrested.
The Supreme Court.
It took 28 years before they made an arrest, and it was a very, very unique case, and they all are, is what we found.
I was just about to say with Mr. Welch or anybody else that I've been honored to sit with. What I get out of it is knowing what I lost.
Yeah.
What I lost was that loved one that they're sharing, and I can multiply that by I can't imagine how they're feeling.
Yeah. Tell us how somebody can read more about JAXImpact, can get involved, can help you out. You have a website. You need to.
I have a website. I need to update it.
It's just JAXImpact.org.
But a lot of our focus is on juveniles, so we try to reach out to, and that's why we have the Facebook, we have a Twitter, we have Pinterest, we have Instagram, and I try to stay up on it myself. Yeah. Again, we're so small, we're so cornered. We're not expanded in that way, but that is a lot of our focus. So we do have a website, which you can also see the information on, and I do need to update it.
But Facebook is where you do social media.
Facebook is generally where you're going to find the information, and Twitter. Facebook and Twitter are the two main ones. And as everybody knows, I'm long-winded.
We do know that.
I'm long-winded, so Twitter is really difficult for me sometimes because it's certain characters and it limits you. But I just when I feel really passionate about something, I keep going.
Well, you have a way with words, but yes, you have been known to post some really long posts and carry some really long conversations.
On my personal Facebook, I get up every morning and I still look for inspiration because.
I heard rumor that Facebook's going to start limiting characters based on your posts. So. No, not really.
No, it's still beyond everybody's belief that this is a job. It's not a job. This is what I do daily for the state attorney's office, and what I do every day is a job that I wish I can get a pink slip in.
Yeah.
If I can get a pink slip, I know that there's no more crime that's going on out there, and not another loved one's going to go around suffering.
Right.
So there's a lot of times that I have to sit back and regroup myself. I know if I had to sit back and regroup myself after Tammy Watts' case, and listening to a strong father get up there and a strong sister get up there and give the kind of statement that they gave that I'm never going to be able to feel, I know that they moved me.
Yeah.
And I have to take that time to be able to recoup myself.
Yeah. This career path can be emotionally draining. You talked about Camp Maddie weekends, talk about trials, talk about trying to share a burden with a family when they're going through a trial.
And share the frustrations.
I mean,
there are frustrations, believe me.
It's hard, and there needs to be recovery time, and there needs to be self-care. Otherwise you burn out and you won't be able to help anybody. You'll be back waiting for the mailman every day.
What I find for myself is to look up quotes in the morning. And when I look up those quotes, I don't post quotes because of a certain reason or I don't have to have a reason for that quote. When I see that quote or I see a Bible verse or I see something that really just moves me, I share it on the Facebook because I hope that what I was moved by can move someone else.
Well, you do great work, Carl. What's the Facebook page? What is for JAXImpact? Is it just?
It's at JAXImpact.
JAXImpact. All right.
JAXImpact.
Carl, I'm proud to call you a friend and be a part of your journey, and you be a part of my journey and where we started and the similarities and where we've ended up, and kind of both adopting these causes that were so impactful in our lives and trying to help people. I miss our days of working in the same office, and being there for each other when we were dealing with other family struggles and trying to work through issues. I miss those things, but sometimes those are the sacrifices to be able to move on and do more good. And
it's been a unique experience going from the nonprofit into the legal world, and again, it was a struggle of whether or not I wanted to do that, but I felt like it was going to I felt like it was going to be more of an educational thing for me, so I could see the other side.
Yeah.
And it's helped, and there's still other fields I would like to, but this is where I feel like I'm most helpful to help an office that is a prosecution-based office.
Yeah.
To provide the best services to the victims.
It's important to have somebody that knows the ins and outs of both a tragedy and of the legal system to be able to help guide those families.
Right.
It's important work that you do, and I think your office of the state attorney's offices that I deal with and law enforcement agencies that I deal with, your office does a great job of trying to be there for victims. And again, we talk in generalities here because each case is unique, and sometimes there are families that don't get what they feel they need. Sometimes they don't get it from us. Sometimes they don't get it from you. Sometimes they don't get it from
everybody's
detectives.
Unique.
Everybody's unique. So we're not saying that everybody that deals with the state attorney's office and the Fourth Judicial Circuit will have a wonderful experience.
In the end, we all have to remember, whether there's an arrest or not an arrest, the greatest injustice is forgetting who we lost.
Yeah. So that's where we keep our focus. I think that's probably a good place to close today. Carl, thank you so much for coming out and spending some time with us. we'll post this. We have a YouTube channel where we'll download this. We'll share that in the comments. You can go back. We talked about some of the previous ones we've done, so you can watch those on our YouTube channel. We'll be back next week. I think Lorena Inclan is going to join us next week, and we'll come up with a case that we've done to talk about. But thanks again, Carl.
Thank you.
Good luck, and we'll see you guys next week.